Now, the question is, why would people then, having their own outlets through social media, through their websites and whatnot, do this now through the internet age? And I think it has to do, again, with the word that we used beforehand, approbation. They're looking for others to give them the thumbs up, to give them the approbation, which also leads one to understand that these people have, in very high regard, human opinion. And the text very clearly tells us that we're not to look for approval from men. Jesus.
And they're looking for approbation, I'm sorry to interrupt, even if what they're looking to have approved runs against God's will, because I believe that's included in there.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when we mention, for example, Jesus himself, we find this in John's gospel, that he says that he never entrusted himself to man because he knew what was in man. And Jesus himself says that he's not looking for the glory of man because, again, he knows what is in man's soul. But it seems like Christians haven't quite learned the lesson that we ought not look for public approval, because at the end of the day, what the public is looking to approve is sin. That's why they try to silence the gospel and holy living, sanctification, every which way they can, because it brings to conviction. So in essence, when you're trying to look for public approval, you're trying to appeal to people's baser instincts.
So these people are being seduced in the flesh. And at the beginning, maybe at the beginning, they're going like, wow, God doesn't like this. The Lord would not have me touch this at all. But they feel seduced. And so all of a sudden, they're looking for this approbation. Somebody that will say, yeah, why not? Look, I have a biblical verse that extends some coverage for you. And next thing you know, you're submerged in something that God has prohibited, something that runs contrary to God's will.
Yes.
But now you have the approbation of your fellow man.
Which to me gives me the high. When men tell me I'm doing a great thing, then I have to keep going. I have to keep doing it.
I think a lot of Christians are trapped in this.
I think so. I agree. I think you and I have read before, and there's very few people that have noticed this, but the way that they have put it is in the following manner. We live in a generation that says, I'll be interested in your depravity so long as you're interested in my depravity, or pretend to be interested in my depravity. That seems to be the extent of the social contract nowadays.
Here's another interpretation to that. I'll say what you're doing is okay if you will say about what I'm doing, it's okay.
So now, again, there's no longer any conviction. Even though we know inherently that what we're doing is
no
wrong.
longer the moral guide. It's no longer the moral compass. It's, the approval that I get from my friends and family members or other brothers and or sisters in the faith.
Even though we know it's inherently wrong.
Absolutely.
And then we'll defend it to the death, even though we know the Bible speaks against this, because what's more important to us is man's approval than God's approval.
All things are naked before God. I believe that's Hebrews 4:13.
Yes.
Which means that you can't hide a thing from God, not a single thing, right? And so when the couple is created, he creates them and he sets them in place, and they're naked and they're not ashamed. So he wanted the couple to enjoy this intimacy, no secrets. I remember the very first series of lessons that I brought on marriage. I believed I called it something like completely one in spirit, soul, and body. And it's important that the marriage be understood in that manner. Being abundance, being in God, or God having an abundance of spirit to create two. He did not create two. This is God speaking through Malachi. He created one.
Yes.
Why would he create one? He wanted a family for himself. And so when you read the Bible and you take a look at this nakedness, being naked with each other, and God seeing all things, they're all naked before him. I think using the allegory language, we're talking about a transparency that has to be there in your relationship to God and in your relationship to what? To your wife, to your mate. But if you take it outside of that, okay, Jesus said, if you want something from God, go to your prayer closet and let him know what it is you need and what it is you're looking for.
It's all in private. Exactly.
And it should be the same thing with your wife and the wife with the husband.
Exactly.
Let's talk about these issues. We have issues, whether they be sexual, whether they be financial. whether they be with our kids, with our
And
grandkids.
this is, I'm sorry to interrupt, because this is, some people might discount your counsel and say that's only for married couples. No, this is for every single Christian in every position of life that they find themselves in, whether they are young folk, whether they are thinking about getting married, whether they're in the middle of courting someone, whether they're in marriage, they're raising their children, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, thank you for opening up that subtopic. If there's a young lady that has questions about sex, how this works in marriage, she's got her mom there.
Exactly.
Ugh, I don't want to talk to mom about this. I'd rather talk to my friends or to my teachers.
Or my school teachers.
Or the sex counselor. And now you have a multiplication of the distribution of evil.
Yes.
And all of this rises against what God said. This is an intimate thing. This is a private thing. And when you take it outside of that realm, outside of the borders, if you will, that God placed for it, I think you're taking it into a dangerous place, because all of a sudden the walls come down and anything and all things go.
Absolutely. And then typically, again, exhibitionism, exploitation, all these things now play a crucial role in that sort of publishing of one's most intimate secrets. I'd like to quote a couple of texts here to give biblical backing to what we are speaking. John chapter 2, verse 23, now when he, Jesus, was in Jerusalem at the Passover during the feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs which he did. Here's the key verses. But Jesus did not commit himself to them, because he knew all men and had no need that anyone should testify of man, for he knew what was in man. So we learn an important lesson here from Jesus, in that I know what it is that you're looking for. I know what would give me your approval, and I don't want your sinful approbation, because I know it runs contrary to God's law.
Excellent.
So, I mean, we learn an excellent lesson here from Christ. And here's another text which the Apostle Paul, writing to the Thessalonian church, says, or he writes the following, 1 Thessalonians 4, verses 10 and on. And indeed, you do so toward all the brethren who are in Macedonia, but we urge you, brethren, that you increase more and more, that you also aspire to lead a quiet life, to mind your own business, and to work with your own hands as we commanded you, that you may walk properly towards those who are out on the outside, and that you may lack nothing. This runs completely contrarian to the modern social media culture of let's expose everything, let's air absolutely everything, because we're looking for those thumbs up.